IoT and what is robotics. So that is what is the topics what we are going to cover in this webinar. So before that, I hope each and every one of you are safe at your home. So please don't roam outside since this is a new kind of issue what we are facing and this the whole world is facing. So yeah, we have to respect whatever decisions has been taken by the country and by the prime minister. So yeah, respect those things and we'll just move on with the sessions. So this is what I've planned for this webinar today. So the first thing what we are going to look into is that how to utilize this time during this pandemic, because this lockdown is a very new thing for each and every one of us. So we just look into what we can do during this time, how to utilize this time during this pandemic sessions. And yeah, the next thing is we'll be looking into what is embedded systems, what is the basic of embedded systems, and why do we need these embedded systems, right? So once we look into what is embedded system, then we will have this second question, that is why do we need these embedded systems. So we'll be looking into those basic things. Then characteristics of embedded system. So what are the main characteristics, how to identify it as an embedded system or not. So the main features or the main characteristics of an embedded system, we'll be looking into that. Then we have something called basic peripherals of a microcontroller. So before looking into that, we look into what is a microcontroller, and then we look into what is this basic peripherals of the microcontroller, right? So basic peripherals in the sense what each and every microcontroller should consist of, like the main necessary things. So what are those? We'll be looking into that. Then how to choose a microcontroller for a particular embedded application, right? So how do we choose a microcontroller? What are the criterias we'll need to follow so that yeah, we'll be able to select the proper microcontroller for our application. And there's one more special slide where we'll be discussing about the skills which has to be possessed as an embedded engineer. As a student, I like I understand that few of the students will not have any idea like what are the basic skills required. So how do I go into a core company? So what are the basic skills they ask as a fresher? So all those things will be discussed in this particular slide. Then we'll understand what is IoT, then IoT architecture. So the industry 4.0 revolution, what is this revolution, what are the previous revolutions which has happened. Then we have industrial IoT, what is this industrial IoT. So we'll be looking into that. And then a few of the trending fields in industry 4.0. So we'll look into that also. And at the end of today's session, we'll be looking into how these robotic systems are being connected to the internet, right? The internet for robotic systems. So this is what I've planned for this particular webinar. So without wasting much time, we'll just move on to the slide here. So how to make use of this opportunity? We have got lots of time. We are staying in home. We are not roaming anywhere outside. So how to utilize this opportunity is that first thing we have to have patience, because as a student, you will have thoughts like, yeah, this lockdown has occurred. I don't know what is going on with this lockdown and when the exams is going to go, and will I get a job or not. So these kind of questions and these kind of thoughts is will be common for the students. So I suggest the students should have patience, because uh, having patience, and you will uh, have patience and yeah, get the skill set, utilize this opportunity. Because uh, you have lots of time and you get few online courses available, so you take up those online courses, build your skill set, so that when the company starts hiring, you can just be having those necessary skill set, and you can be ready to face the interview and enter the company, right? So have patience, because this is a blessing in disguise, right? So you should possess those skills, is utilize the time what you have right now. So the next thing is you have to think long term, right? Think long term. So don't think about what is going to happen to your exams and what will the company do in this uh, particular thing, right? Just give me 1 second.
Uh, Sir, request is there at your side. Keep the annotations off.
Okay, yes sir, I've
That,
already made it off. Okay.
yeah, yeah.
So yeah, you have to
Okay.
think long term. So think long term in the sense, you should think about what skills you have to possess and how to face the interview and how to enter into a company, and what are the things you have to do in the future, not the near future, the far future. So you have to think long term in that way, and you should not think in the next 2 months the exam is going to happen, all those things. No, think long term, because you have time, you can plan your future. Okay. So, and yeah, the next thing is you have best things which happens during the worst situations. So during this kind of situation, the best thing which can happen is you can build your skill set. So that is the main thing as a student, what you have to do, learn new things, build new things. So yeah, and then you have to understand the pattern shift. So there is a particular pattern, so you should understand that particular pattern and constantly align yourself to that pattern, so that yeah, you will be in that particular flow and you will not be lagging behind others, right? And you should of course improve your skill set. That is the main thing. As a student you should have few skill sets, so that you will be easily hired by a company. So yeah, that is what the companies look for, your skill sets. So moving on to the next slide, we have something called what is an embedded system, right? So, so yeah, what is an embedded system? Before looking into the uh, definition of what is an embedded system, we look into few examples, right? We like you have seen your washing machine in your home. So what does this washing machine do is it'll just wash, or it'll clean your clothes, right? So that is what your washing machine does. And your washing machine cannot cook food, or your washing machine cannot display some movie or something like that. It can only just wash clothes. So if you come to another application, which is your microwave oven, so that can only uh, cook your food or heat your food, right? So these embedded systems can perform only a particular task, right? So in nowadays you have more features with the washing machine and with the microwave, so that you can rinse the clothes, you can even dry the clothes. All those options are being uh, like those are the new features which are coming up nowadays. But in like if you go back around 10 years, that is when your you had only one thing, that washing machine was just washing your clothes, nothing else, right? So the embedded system, if we look into what is this embedded system, it is performing a single particular task, right? So that is what these embedded systems are doing. Maybe if you remember 10 or 15 years back, you had something called a pager. Okay, so what this pager used to do is it used to display the messages on the screen. Okay, so if someone had a phone, so he used to uh, send a message to this particular person who has a pager. So this pager just used to receive the message and it used to just display the message on the screen. So it never, you were not able to even reply on that pager. So it is like a small hardware with a small software which is helping you to display the uh, message or whatever it is being received on the screen, right? So if you combine all this and if you just look into what is the definition of embedded system, you can just say that embedded system is a combination of both hardware and software which is used to perform a single particular task, right? Single specific task. And even you can take your mouse, your keyboard, all these are embedded systems, right? So you use your mouse just to point on something, click and open something or something like that. Nothing else. You will not be able to type letters using your mouse, right? So yeah, these are also embedded systems which are part of a general system, right? Which are part of a larger system, which is your PC. So yeah, this is what is an embedded system. It is a combination of both hardware and software, which is dedicated to perform a single task, and it is also a part of a larger system, right? So these are few examples available here for an embedded system. You have television, aeroplanes, and you have aeroplanes in the sense there are few parts in the aeroplanes, so those are embedded system. Then gaming machine, camera. Then you have mobile phones. In cars, you have few things which are embedded systems. Then your printer, washing machine, etc. And those are the main examples of an embedded system. Embedded systems are available in and around you. They are available everywhere in the world. Right? So yeah, moving on. Uh, why do we need these embedded systems? Why do we need this embedded systems, right? So now we just learned what is the definition of embedded systems, but why do we need these embedded systems, right? We have the general systems which can perform all the tasks, right? Your PC can perform multiple tasks very faster than your embedded system, right? But your embedded system is used to perform a single task, but your general system, it can perform multiple tasks. But why do we still need embedded system is because embedded systems provide reliability, and power consumption is less compared to your general system, right? So the power consumed by your embedded system is very much less compared to your generalized system. And the size and performance, size maybe, yeah, sometimes it will be large and it will be small, you so size limitations are there. And you have uh, real time performance. So performance is very much good in embedded systems than compared to your PCs and other things, because sometimes if you take your PC there, you will have some issues like your PC is getting hanged or something, but your embedded systems will perform the same task million number of times without even a little bit down in the efficiency, right? So that is why we need embedded systems, because they are having high efficiency and they consume less power compared to your normal generalized system. Yeah. So yeah, these are the basic characteristics of embedded systems. So let us just look into what are these characteristics, and what are these characters. We'll just look into what these characteristics are, right? So the first thing you have is all embedded systems are task specific. So that is what I explained you guys around. Each and every embedded system performs a single particular task, right? So it is task specific and it has to perform that particular task. And the next point you have is embedded systems are created to perform the task within a certain time frame. Okay, so what does this mean? We'll just look into few examples and we'll come back to this point, right? So if you take the braking system in your car, okay, that is an embedded system which is connected using a CAN protocol inside your vehicle. So yeah, this braking system, let's say a person is driving at a particular speed, and at point of time he has to stop the vehicle, so he'll apply the brakes, right? He'll apply the brakes. So if the brakes is applied after 2 or 3 minutes, then just imagine the situation there. uh, there will be a disaster happening, and maybe he may lose his life, right? So braking system is very important in this particular time. So with that certain time frame, in this braking system, the time frame is at that particular instant only the brake has to be applied for the car, right? So that is this time frame of this braking system. So let me just give you another example, which is your wiper in the car, right? So if you turn on the wiper in the car, and if it is moving very fast, right? Very fast compared to the normal speed, then like we'll not be able to see the road ahead of us, and there may be some accidents happening because of that itself, right? So there is certain time frame for each and every embedded system. So in that particular time frame itself, the uh, embedded system has to perform that particular task. So in this braking system case, at that particular instant itself, the brakes has to be applied to the car, right? So that is what is called the time frame, and your embedded system has to perform the task within that particular time frame itself, right? So yeah, the next point you have is they have minimal or no user interface. So almost all the embedded systems have minimal interface, right? So like if you take your washing machine, you have to do your settings on the washing machine, and yeah, after once you do that setting and you just click on start or any other button there, so it'll automatically do all the task and provide you the output, that is your clothes would have been washed, right? So that is like every embedded system or all the embedded systems will have minimal or no user interface, right? So the next point you have is some embedded systems are designed to react to external stimuli. So what does this mean is, let us take a small example for this also. You have your thermometer, right? You have your digital thermometer. So this particular digital thermometer is an embedded system which reacts to our body temperature, right? So you take your digital thermometer, you just test your body temperature if you have a fever or something. So based on the body temperature, this screen, whatever screen we have on the digital thermometer, the values keeps on changing, and the body temperature will be displayed on that screen, right? So that embedded system is reacting to our body temperature, which is nothing but an external stimuli. So it is reacting to our body temperature, and it is changing the values on the display. And once uh, like the body temperature has been read perfectly, so yeah, it'll just give a beep sound or something on the thermometer. So these embedded systems are trying to react to the external stimuli. Then you have embedded systems which are built to achieve certain efficiency levels. So almost all these embedded systems are high efficient. So yeah, they are built to achieve these efficiencies. Then you have embedded systems which cannot be upgraded by the users, right? So if you take an example of the washing machine, so let's take an example that your washing machine can just wash clothes. It cannot rinse and it cannot uh, dry the clothes. It can just wash the clothes. Okay. So yeah, now in this particular time, so there is a washing machine which can also uh, rinse the clothes and dry the clothes. But this washing machine, which can only wash the clothes, so that particular thing cannot be upgraded now, right? You cannot provide extra features for that washing machine. So what you have to do, you have to go give this return, sell this washing machine, and buy a new one in exchange, right? So whatever embedded systems once after manufactured cannot be upgraded, right? Cannot be upgraded. So if like they find out new features for that particular embedded system, then there is another product of the same this thing, and this product will be having the extra features of that similar old product, right? So these embedded systems will not be able to be upgraded. Then you have something called microcontrollers and microprocessors, which are hearts of an embedded system. So those are basically used to design these embedded systems. And these embedded systems must have a peripherals so that they can get an input and provide output from that system, right? So they have to take a particular input and they can provide some input, like read the temperature value, and if the temperature is more, than turn on the AC, something like that. So these embedded systems uh, has should need peripherals so that they can take the input and provide some output. Okay. And in embedded systems, mainly hardware is used for security and performance, and your software is used for features. Okay. Software is mainly used to provide features and hardware for security and performance. Yeah. So in the next slide, we have what is a microcontroller. So a microcontroller is a single chip microcomputer. So why do we call it a microcomputer? Because e- this microcontroller will contain a microprocessor with inbuilt peripherals like your RAM, ROM, then you have your ADC. All these peripherals are internally present for your microcontroller. So yeah, that is why we call a microcontroller as a microcomputer. So in this, if you take the case of microprocessor, so on your PC, so if you just open the CPU and just look into the what is present inside a um, CPU, you will have a big motherboard and a processor on that motherboard, and all the RAM, hard disk, everything is connected externally to that particular motherboard, right? So nothing is present internally for the microprocessor except your CPU and registers, right? This RAM, ROM, all these features are not internally present for your microprocessor. So for microprocessor, everything has to be connected externally, but your microcontroller will have inbuilt peripherals. So that is why we call it as a microcomputer. So then you have uh, word length, different word lengths for the microcontrollers, right? So you have 4-bit, 8-bit, 16-bit, 32-bit, etc. You have, these are the word lengths available for the microcontrollers. And what does this 4-bit, 8-bit, or 16-bit signify is that your 4-bit signifies the CPU can perform 4-bit operations, and data registers are of 4-bit, and data bus available inside the microcontroller is of 4-bit. So if you take 8-bit, then CPU can perform 8-bit operations, 8-bit registers, and 8-bit data bus. So that is what the word length signifies for a microcontroller. So if you just take an example of a 8051 microcontroller, so it is an 8-bit microcontroller. So 8-bit in an 8051 is CPU can perform 8-bit operations, and uh, data registers are 8-bit, and your uh, this data bus is also 8-bit. So that is what the word length signifies for a microcontroller. Okay? And it is low cost compared to your microprocessor. Your microcontroller is low cost. Then yes, these are the basic peripherals which has to be present in a microcontroller. right? So the first thing is CPU. CPU is used to perform arithmetic and logical operations for the microcontroller. And you have external oscillators. So these external oscillators mainly are crystal oscillators, which are used so that they provide precise clock frequencies. So external oscillators are required. Then you require on-chip RAM and on-chip ROM. So ROM is your non-volatile memory, where if you store some data on the ROM, and if you remove the power supply for a particular microcontroller and provide the power supply again, uh, the data present in the ROM. So whatever data you have stored in the ROM, so that data will not be erased. So in the RAM, so in this case of RAM, it is a volatile memory, right? So whatever data is present in the RAM will be erased once it is powered off and it is powered on. So yeah, this is the main difference between your ROM and RAM. And the data present inside the ROM. Okay, this is very important. The data present inside the ROM is stored in sequential manner. Okay, it is stored in sequential in the sense in an ordered manner. So in a queue kind of thing, like 1, 2, 3. So that sequential manner, the data has been stored. But in the case of RAM, the data will be stored randomly. So that is why RAM is very much faster than ROM, because data can be accessed randomly, but in ROM you have to access in a sequential manner. Okay, so that is why RAM is very much faster than ROM. Then you require IO ports. So that input and outputs can be provided from the microcontroller and to the microcontroller. Uh, then you have interrupt controller. So interrupt controller is used to provide the priority and recognize the interrupt. So all those particular things have been conducted by the interrupt controller. Then you have timers and counters. So timers are basically used to generate delay, and counters are used to count an event, right? If there is an event occurring, then please count these events, right? So let's take an example. uh, uh, Addition of two numbers is an event. Okay, so whenever two numbers are added, please count this event, how many times the numbers are being added. So counters are used for that, and timers are basically used to generate precise delay. Okay, then you need data bus and address bus so that you can communicate with the peripherals, and you need serial port for communication. So why serial port is required? Because if a microcontroller has to communicate with another microcontroller, so there should be some communication protocols which has to be followed by two microcontrollers. So serial ports are required so that data can be exchanged from both the microcontrollers. Yeah. Then, how do you choose this microcontroller for a particular embedded application? So, whatever topics I've told till now, so those are the basic embedded topics which you have to be strong in, because these are the basic things asked in an interview. So, when you attend an interview and when you uh, attend for an embedded interview, like particularly, then at that time they'll ask you everything related to embedded systems, even from the starting, like what is a microcontroller, what does a microcontroller consist of, what is this 8-bit signify. So all these kind of questions will be faced during an interview. So that is why I just wanted to revise you with this basic things, right? So next, maybe in the next slide, I have the skill sets which has to be possessed by an embedded engineer. So when I come to that part, I'll be telling how to learn these things, all those things, right? So for now, we'll look into what are the various criterias which are required to choose a microcontroller for an embedded application. So now let's say you are building an embedded product So you are building a product and you have to choose a particular microcontroller for that. So how do you choose it? There are few criteria which you have to follow. So it is mentioned on the PPT. So the first thing is your microcontroller word length. So word length in the sense, how many bit microcontroller is required for your application? Do you require a 4-bit microcontroller, 8-bit, 16-bit, 32-bit? So something, how many bit microcontroller is required for your embedded application has to be decided. Sorry. Yeah, it should be decided. So the next thing is speed. So how fast the microcontroller has to execute tasks, right? In the case of speed, you have to look into the clock frequency, because uh, the higher the frequency, the tasks are performed much faster, right? So if you need uh, 10 kilohertz or 10 megahertz speed or 20 megahertz speed or 40 megahertz speed or 80 megahertz. So whatever is required, so that speed has to be decided. So one more thing is that if the speed or if the clock uh, frequency increases, then power consumption also increases. So you should keep that in mind, that once if you are selecting a microcontroller which supports a frequency of, let's say, 80 megahertz, then power consumption also increases, right? Your power consumption will not be low when you are using a microcontroller which consumes 80 megahertz uh, clock frequency, which has an 80 megahertz clock frequency. So that is why if you take your microprocessor which you have in your laptops and PC, those work in gigahertz speed, right? 2.4 gigahertz, 2.3 gigahertz, something like that. So that is in gigahertz. That is why they consume lots of power, right? So speed and power consumption are interrelated. So packaging, how the packaging has to be. So I hope everyone would have seen an 8051 microcontroller. So that kind of packaging is called dip packaging, which is called dual inline packaging. So on the both the ends, on the left and right, you will have pins, right? So the pins will be on the left side and the right side. So yeah, those are very much easy to solder for you guys. But if you take a quad flat package, right? Quad flat package. And when I show a few microcontrollers for you on the camera, so that on that particular time, you will understand how this packaging looks. So in quad flat package, the pins are very small. So machine soldering has to be done. Hand soldering will not be proper for that particular microcontroller. So based on your application, if you want a dip package or quad flat package or any other type, there are lots of packaging available. So whichever you want, you can decide that. Then you have something called power consumption. So yeah, how much power has to be consumed? The power consumption has to be as less as possible, right? And amount of on-chip RAM and ROM. So yeah, how how much RAM space is required and ROM space is required. So that also has to be decided. And on-chip peripherals requirement. So what are the necessary peripherals for the embedded application? Like, do you require an ADC, or do you require an internal temperature sensor for this application? So those kinds of peripheral requirements should be decided. So GPIO is required, timers are required, and yeah, it should support interrupt concepts. Maybe ARM architecture is required so that it processes interrupts much faster than normal microcontrollers. So all those peripheral requirements has to be listed, and based on that, you should select a particular microcontroller. Then you have something called upgradability. So in maybe in the previous slide, I just told you that yeah, embedded systems cannot be upgraded, right? I just told you that thing. But here I'm talking about a microcontroller, not an whole embedded system. These is the criteria for the microcontroller. So let's say you have written a code, okay? Let's say some 2,000 lines of code has been written for your application. So those many lines of code you try to dump in a microcontroller, and the memory space is not sufficient, right? So at that particular time, your microcontroller should support the expandability of your memory space. That is, you can interface an external memory for your microcontroller. So that kind of upgradability has to be possible with the microcontroller. So that particular microcontroller has to be selected. Okay, so before manufacturing, when you're testing, that at that particular time you will be able to upgrade and you will be able to do everything. But once you have manufactured the final product, after that, once you push it to the market outside, you will not be able to upgrade it, right? So if you push the product outside to the market, and after that you are getting some other idea that, yeah, I should have added another feature like this, then you should again create another product with that extra feature and again push it to the market. So that is what is happening in the uh, in the market right now, right? If you take a smartphone, you can see before there were bezels and camera was uh, your camera was a single camera on the backside, which was the main camera. But now, like, they're implementing triple cameras, four cameras, then the pop-up camera. So many features have been upgraded. So that is how it happens, right? So the same phone cannot be upgraded. Your old phone will having one camera will not cannot be upgraded now, which can have two cameras, right? No, not possible. There is another product which is coming with two cameras. You have to go buy that itself. So that is how these embedded systems are. Then cost per unit. So the cost per unit must be as less as possible, and availability of development tools. So even after satisfying all these criteria, like all these criteria you have satisfied in a very good manner, and if there are no development tools, if there is no IDE to program that particular microcontroller, then it is no use of selecting that particular microcontroller, right? So IDEs, compilers, assemblers, everything must be available for that particular microcontroller. Then support forums must be available, so that if you are not able to program some peripheral or something, so you can ask those particular doubts and clarify your doubts with a particular microcontroller company, right? So support forums must be available so that you will be able to program in a much faster manner and complete your product or your application within the given time. So these are the basic criterias which has to be looked into uh, to select a microcontroller for a particular embedded application, right? So going to the next slide. Yeah, so the basic skills which has to be possessed as an embedded engineer. So the first basic skill is that you should be knowing C programming. Okay. Yeah, you should know C programming, because C is the basic programming language which will be asked in an interview. Though, so yeah, C programming is uh, very much required, like concept like pointers, structures, unions, and you have memory allocation. So all these kind of concepts has to be thorough. So C programming is very much required as a skill for an embedded engineer and for any engineer who is trying to attend an interview. So that particular EC engineer or CS engineer or IS engineer. So that particular engineer has to possess this skill. He has to basically know C programming, and you should learn embedded C programming. So yeah, it is similar to C programming, 90% similar to C programming, but embedded C has few extra features, and few features from C programming have been removed. So embedded C programming has to be known, such as API level programming, register level programming. So those kind of different programming languages, but the syntax will be very much similar to C programming, right? basic electronic concepts. So basic electronic concepts is must, such as pull-up configuration, pull-down configuration, how does the transistor work. So these basic concepts has to be known. Okay. Then embedded software and hardware. So about the hardware, knowledge about the hardware must be uh, s- is must, and it is very much required. And software, so how to program this particular hardware, what are the necessary things. So all those software related and hardware related things must be known for an embedded engineer. And protocols, embedded protocols must be known. So what are these protocols? In the sense, it is a set of rules which has to be followed by a particular system, so that communication happens in a proper manner. Okay. So there are few embedded protocols such as UART, SPI, I2C. So all these protocols is must. Those are required. Okay. Then networking concepts. So if you are very much interested in IoT concepts, then networking concepts are also very important, such as OSI model, TCP model, how it works in the background. So all these concepts has to be known. So as a fresher, these are the basic skills which has to be known as a fresher. But as you move on, there are few more skills. So since you guys are engineering students who are attending this session, I've just put these main skills which has to be possessed. Uh, Yeah. So in the next slide, we will be looking on to what is this IoT, and we will try to understand how this IoT works and all those. So just give me one session, 1 minute. So before looking into what is this IoT, understanding what is IoT, let me just share a small video for you guys. Uh, so just give me 1 minute. I will be sharing the videos for you. Yeah, so 1 second. So yeah, this is a small video. I've just uploaded a program called PWM on the microcontroller. So yeah, this is the software interface what I've been used, called Code Composer Studio from Texas Instruments, and the microcontroller what I'm using is Tiva C series microcontroller from TI. So I'm just uploading the program to the microcontroller, and you can just check out the change in the brightness of the LED. So this is a small uh, uh, application using an embedded system. So you can see the brightness of the LED is changing by 10% every time. So this is a small application which I've implemented using a microcontroller. Uh, So I just wanted you guys to see that uh, video. There's one more small video on IoT. So let me just show you that also. Then we'll move on and understand what is this IoT everything. So here in this video, I've created a small local web server. So that web server is used to control and turn on the LED on and off. So this is the program uh, in Energia. It is also a software from TI. So it is very much similar to your Arduino software. So this is the program which is being done uh, for the same microcontroller. This program is being uploaded and the web server will be opened. So yeah, you can see the microcontroller here. I've used a booster pack which on top of the microcontroller, which is the CC3100 booster pack. So it is also from TI, which provides Wi-Fi capability for a particular microcontroller. So what microcontroller I showed you in the previous video, so that does not support Wi-Fi capabilities. By just attaching that particular booster pack, this microcontroller will be able to connect into internet. So I'm just uploading the code. Let me just forward the video and show you guys the output. So yeah, I'm just copying the IP address of the device. So this IP address will be copied and pasted onto Google. So this is the web page created uh, by the server. So here in this case, your microcontroller acts as a server and your web page will be acting as a client. So I just click on high. So you can just observe the LED next to the switch there. I just click on high and low, it turns on and off. So you can see it here, it turned off. So it is turning on. Once I click on low, it is turning off. So this is a small application done using your Internet of Things. So let us now understand what is this IoT, right? Let us now understand what this IoT is mainly consist of, right? So before understanding IoT, we will look into what is this internet, right? So internet is a collection of networks. So you can understand this net stands for networks and inter is communication between these networks, right? So internet is nothing but communication happening between the cluster of networks. So that is your internet. And before in the previous like 10 years back, we were just using internet for your PCs to open Google and search few things, your Gmail, and only those things internet was used for. But nowadays, internet is used everywhere, right? It is required for each and every device. Right? Now you have your smartphones. Basic example for IoT is your smartphones, where it is connected to the network, and yeah, you will be able to access everything on your smartphone itself, right? So looking on to the definition of internet, it is like mm, these things which are trying to connect to a network so that they can communicate with each other. IoT definition is that when these things are trying to connect to the internet, and once they connect to the internet, they will be able to communicate with each other. So these devices are called as smart devices. Okay. So yeah, so that is what is your IoT, where the things are connected to the internet so that those things can become smart things, right? Smart things. So there are so many examples for IoT nowadays. uh, you're having your smart house, like home automation where IoT is required, CCTV. Then you have your gaming consoles, all your gaming consoles which are connected to the internet, and you will be able to download the game through the internet itself. Nowadays, you will not be requiring the CDs and your pen drives. You can directly pay some amount for that particular game, and you will be able to download that game from the internet itself. And now you can control lights, everything. Smart bulbs are available from Philips and different companies. So you will be able to control these particular lights and everything through internet. So internet of things is the existing or the industrial revolution which is happening right now. And the data exchange which is being happening uh, through the internet, so it is very much easier, right? So if you go to the previous, like past 10 years or something like that, so when you had to communicate with your relative or someone who is staying in another uh, country or another different continent, so at that particular time you had to take your telephone, you had to call the operator of that particular telephone, tell that operator that please connect to this person, he's staying in this particular place, this state, this continent, everything you have to mention. And you have to wait so that that operator tries to contact that particular states or that country's operator. Then he has to tell that operator that let please connect to this person, there is one more person on the line waiting. So you have to wait lot of time so that you have you can connect with your relative or your friends who is staying in another country, and you can speak to them. So sometimes you need to wait for hours so that that connection has been established. So that is what used to happen before. Now, once the internet came into this picture, what happens is you had video calls, you had WhatsApp, so many things, you had social media so that you can connect with all your friends and family all over the world using social media. So that is what is internet has revolutionized in this world, right? So yeah, we will look into how internet and IoT devices have been increased. So you can see here the world population, which is being mentioned in the uh, blue, and green is the smart devices which are being increased exponentially. So you can see in the year 2003, there were only your mobile phones. I hope you remember you had only that Nokia small handsets. So when you come to 2008, the world population and the number of devices are equal. You can see it is in billions of devices, right? It is 6.721 billions of devices, and the world population was also same. But in the year 2010, the world population is around this much, but the devices have become more. You can see here devices are around some 12, 13 billion devices, right? Tablets, laptops, phones, everything came during year 2008, 10, something like that. So number of devices started increasing rapidly. So you can, and each and every device used to connect to internet. So if you just go outside, there may be few people who has two or three smartphones with them, and like around six uh, uh, what do you say, your uh, GSM sims, right? So these 4G sims, everything. So these devices, each and every devices is counted as a smart device, right? Three smartphones, then smartphones with one person, then there are so many people available. So so many billions of devices connecting to the internet. So you can see here in 2020, it is around 50 billion smart objects available. Your laptops, your smartphones, then there are uh, your bulbs which can connect to internet. All the devices are whichever is trying to connect to the internet, those including those devices, it is around 50 billion smart objects. So you can see how IoT has revolutionized the world, right? So how many devices has been increased. So this is how it has been evolved around the years. Right? So coming into the IoT architecture, what are the different stages in this IoT architecture? So what are the different stages? In the sense, in the stage one, you have your sensors and actuators. So what do these sensors do is sensors will read the external entities. So whatever external like temperature or humidity or anything. So these sensors are used to read this external humidity, which are almost in analog nature. So all the outside world signals are in analog, right? So these analog signals can be read and converted into digital. So these sensors are used for that particular reason. So it can sense the analog signal and convert that to digital and perform some, provide that digital signal to the microcontroller or any other embedded system so that they can perform a particular task on that particular signal, right? Then you have actuators. So actuators are nothing but your motors or to provide an output. So based, let's say you have created an embedded system where the sensors are, you have a temperature sensor which is reading the room temperature. So if the room temperature is increasing, then uh, the AC has to turn on when it reaches some particular temperature. So this AC is uh, known as an actuator, where the output is provided to a particular device. So that those devices are called as actuators. Right? Then in stage two, you have data acquisition systems to store the data and to manage these data. So there is a system which is called data acquisition systems. So how these data acquisition systems will utilize the data received by the sensors and actuators. So if you take an example, let's say online marketing, right? So you have your Flipkart, your Amazon, all these, etc. So these, what do these people do is they acquire the data from the users, lots of data. Each and every person may be having Flipkart in their smartphones, right? So getting the data from all these devices, let's say I open my Flipkart, I look into laptops today, right? Today I'll be looking into laptops. Tomorrow, Flipkart app will try to suggest me that look here, these laptops have discounts. You can just try to buy this. So these data acquisition systems are trying to acquire data from different people and different regions. And what they are trying to do is they are using artificial intelligence and machine learning so that they can, yeah, they can do such kind of activity and they can market the products what they have. Like I just gave you an example. I'm looking into laptops today. So maybe tomorrow Flipkart, you will get a notification from Flipkart that see these laptops are having this many discount, right? I hope everyone would have got such kind of things, right? If you open Flipkart, then on the top only it'll be showing laptops because yesterday I was seeing laptops. So those kind of data has been accessed by the acquisition systems and they are stored and they are utilized in this manner, right? And you have stage three where you have your pre-processing, data pre-processing, all those. And stage four, you will have cloud where data will be uploaded to the cloud if some operation has to be done. So it'll be doing those operations and providing you the necessary data. So this is how an IoT architecture look with four different stages, right? So yeah, applications of IoT. So everyone would have seen those applications of smartphones, smart home. Then you have your smart watches. Then there are few smart cities also being developed now, like Dubai or any other cities which are still being developed as a smart city. There are lots and lots of applications available on IoT, right? Each and every device, each and every embedded system which tries to connect to the internet becomes an IoT device. Okay. So that is why I just wanted to give you an introduction about embedded systems and just go into IoT on the next part. So coming into the industrial revolution, there were now we are in the industrial revolution 4.0, where the internet and robots are uh, revolutionizing the whole world. So there are cyber physical systems, there are the advanced version of your embedded systems which are trying to connect to the internet. So those systems are called cyber physical systems. So those are in the industry 4.0. So in the previous industry revolutions, what were the things which was uh, being invented or being seen, right? So in industry 1.0, you had mechanization and steam engines being developed, where steam engines were used to perform each and every task at that particular time, right? Around uh, maybe around in the 19th century, industry 1.0 started, and industry 2.0 gave an new thing such as your electricity, gas, oil. So all these things were utilized and your internal combustion engine came into picture at this particular point, right? Then during the industry 3.0, electronics, your transistors, your ICs, your telephones and your computers, all these things came into existence during the industrial revolution 3.0. And now we are in the industrial revolution 4.0, where the internet is going to change everything, right? So what is this industry 4.0 revolution? So you can see there are a few examples on the image here. You can see autonomous robots, right? These robots which are able to automatically do all the particular task without human intervention, right? The human is not even interacting with that particular robot, and these robots are able to do these particular tasks, right? So industries are trying to use this IoT in such a way that they will be able to implement these robots, and so that there will be no human interaction, and the process can be done much faster, right? Then you have augmented reality, AR, VR. I hope everyone has seen augmented realities and VR's examples. So you would have seen the VR headset what Samsung or any other companies have used. So they have this VR and you just keep the smartphone there and you will be able to virtually visualize all those things, right? So there are different uh, malls which have this VR gaming places available. So all these are coming into picture, your augmented reality. Then you have cyber security. Since internet is revolutionizing, security is also the necessity thing which is required nowadays. And yeah, cloud computing, big data. So these are the basic examples for industry 4.0 revolution. These are the things which are given importance in this revolution, right? So there is something called IIoT. So I hope you guys now understood what is IoT. So devices which are trying to connect to the internet so that they can become smart devices, right? So IIoT is for the industrial. It is similar to IoT. So you can see this graph here. IoT and IIoT are similar. Uh, Devices are trying to connect to the internet, but IIoT is for the industrial sector and the manufacturing companies, where in that particular case, so let me just tell you the first part about IoT a little bit and come back to IIoT. So in IoT, it is used for household usage and your commercial sector like home automation. And if you're trying to build a simple project, if you're like trying to do as a hobby. So at that particular time, you will be using few sensors which are, yeah, which are uh, being used for the projects or anything. But in IIoT, the sensors what we are using will provide precise values, because since it is used in the industries, these sensors has to uh, give almost like 99.9% efficiency. So these efficiency of the sensors must be high in industrial sectors, because it is used in so many industries nowadays, in your gas industries, mining industries, then many more industries. So if you come to transportation industries, maybe you would have seen Tesla is has already come up with this auto driving cars, right? So I hope you would have seen those videos. People are uh, sleeping peacefully without even touching the steering or the paddle, acceleration pad, or all those things. Automatically the cars are able to drive. And yeah, that is because of the existence of your internet of things, and artificial intelligence, and your machine learning. Because of these three things, that was able to come into picture. Because without IoT, getting so much data, how to move the vehicle or something, so much related data is required to automate car driving, right? So without IoT, that was impossible. So yeah, these are the things which are used in the industry. So IIoT tells that IoT, which is being implemented in the industries, are called as industrial IoT. Okay, so you can see here similar things is your data management, data security, data cloud. So these are similar things between IoT and IIoT. So, and even if you see this graph, you can see the industrial revolution in the wave one, then it is the internet revolution, then it is now the industrial internet, right? Internet is now being trying to be utilized even in the industries now. So yeah, the trends of industries 4.0. We are about to come to the end of the session now. Uh, yeah, let me just give you an inputs regarding how to start, uh, what course to do, and how to start before coming to this trends, right? So yeah, students will have would have been thinking that, yeah, I've like all these things is okay, but how do I start to learn all these, right? How do I start to learn all this is, you have to start with embedded systems. So if you are even interested with in IoT, start with embedded systems, because without embedded systems, IoT is not possible, right? So start with embedded systems, learn embedded system, then move into IoT, start learning IoT, and you'll be able to develop your skills, your C programming and your embedded skills and your IoT skills very much better, right? So in the industry 4.0 trends, you have industrial robotics, which is the biggest share right now. They're trying to uh, implement this in such a way that all these robots used in the industry will try to communicate with each other and will be able to perform the task. So at that particular time, humans need not interact with the robots itself. They will connect, they'll be connected to the internet, they'll try to share data with each other, and they'll be able to perform that particular task. So industrial robotics, the IoT, industrial IoT, so which is trying to be implemented right now, and cyber security, because IoT has become such a vast domain uh, in this revolution. Cyber security is also very important. You have to secure the data. You should not let the hackers hack the data and take the data away, because they are so important. The data what you are recording or something, is being done by a particular industry, that has to be very much secured. So cyber security is also a trending in industry 4.0. Then you would have seen 3D printing, right? 3D printing is also becoming a trending domain in this industry. Then you have advanced human to machine interfaces, then big data, artificial intelligence, augmented reality, virtual reality. So all these are the trendings domains, or the uh, parts in industry 4.0 revolution. So these are the uh, things which are being revolutionized in this industry 4.0. So coming into the internet for robotic systems, as I told you previously, so these robotic systems are being advanced in a very much different manner, and uh, they are trying to be connected to internet, because these once all the robots in the industry are connected to the internet, they will be communicating with each other, and they will try to uh, solve the issues within themselves, and human interaction will be reduced. So yeah, internet for robotic systems is also uh, very much gonna trend in this industrial revolution. So let me just show you a small video on uh, robotics. Like, as students, you will be thinking that, yeah, robotics is a very difficult thing, it is such huge uh, domain, and how will we able to learn all these kinds of things. There are few starter things. Yeah, since yeah, TI, Texas Instruments, has introduced a small uh, robot system called as TI RSLK Max. So this robotic system learning kit is just provided to engineering students. It is just developed because engineering students will be thinking in such a manner that robotics is very difficult. We will not be able to do such kind of things. Uh, so those thoughts has to be removed. So that is why TI has come up with this robotic system learning kit. For engineering students, even the first year students will be able to use this kit and build their own small robots. So let me just stop screen share and show it to you guys on the camera so that it'll be visible for you. So yeah, this is the TI RSLK Max. Uh, so this is a small robotic kit from Texas Instruments for the learning purpose for engineering students, even from first year, second year, third year, fourth year. All the students will be able to uh, learn this robotic kit in a simpler manner, so that their idea, their view towards uh, robotic systems and robotics will change, right? So this is the robot here available, and you have a microcontroller, dedicated microcontroller for that robotic system, which is an MSB 432 microcontroller, which is a combination of MSP 430 architecture as well as ARM architecture. So this is the IC. So I was telling you about the flat package, right? So this is how the package looks, and that is the microcontroller. So let me just show you few demo videos on robotics, and we'll be ending this webinar today. So let me just share my. So this is a small video on how to assemble the robot. Right?
This video will cover the basic.
So I hope it will be audible for you. Let me just check first. So just look into
This video will cover the basic assembly of the parts in Pololu item number 3670 for the TI RSLK. We will also cover installing the TI Launchpad on the robot. Begin by identifying the components included with Pololu item number 3670. One Romi chassis baseplate with the TI RSLK chassis board already screwed on and the battery contacts installed. one right and one left bumper switch assembly, along with 4 nuts and 7/16 inch long screws, one 8-channel QTRX reflectance sensor array, 2 Romy chassis motor clips, 2 gear motors with encoders, 2 Pololu wheels and tires, 1 Romy ball caster kit, 1 breadboard along with standoffs, nuts, and screws. You will need a Phillips head screwdriver to assemble the kit. Even though it's likely your chassis board and battery contacts are already installed on your Romy base plate, we will still go over how to install these parts in this video just in case you need to replace them at some point. Begin by removing the battery cover from the Romy chassis base plate. Get your chassis board and note the battery contacts on the underside of the board. These contacts need to pass through these openings on the Romy chassis. Place the chassis board in its approximate position on the chassis, hold the board in place with one hand, compress the spring contacts, and gently maneuver them through the openings in the chassis until you can press them all the way through. Next, secure the chassis board with hardware using these mounting holes. Place a nut in one of the recesses and then hold it in place with your finger. Insert a 3/16 inch long screw into the corresponding mounting hole in the board and tighten. Repeat for the other 3 mounting holes. Insert the battery contacts into these slots in the battery compartment. Next, install the bumper switches. Note the 1x4 header located on the underside of the chassis board here. Insert the pins on the bumper switch into this header, making sure all 4 pins go in. Then secure the bumper switch to the chassis using the included hardware in these 2 mounting holes. Repeat the whole process for the other bumper switch. The motor clips are identical, so either clip can install on either side of the base plate. Make sure you push the clip all the way into the base plate. You might hear it click before it's all the way in, but notice how the retention tab has not yet seated on top of the battery compartment, so keep pushing until the bottom of the clip is flush here and the retention tab has popped over the battery compartment like it has here. Repeat for the other clip. Like the motor clips, the motors are also identical and can be installed on either side of the chassis. When installed correctly, the encoder pins from the motor should insert into these headers on the chassis board. It can be easy to put the motor in slightly crooked, so before pushing all the way down, make sure the retaining tabs on the outside of the clip are containing the motor. Then push down on the motor, making sure the header on the encoder inserts into the header on the chassis board. Repeat for the other motor. Stretch the tires onto the wheels. Now you can install the wheels. Line up the D shape in the wheel hub with the D on the motor shaft. It will probably be difficult to press the wheel all the way on with your hand, so once it's on like this, put the chassis on its side and press the chassis down against the table to insert the wheel fully onto the motor shaft. Repeat for the other wheel. Next, install the ball caster. The TI RSLK comes with 1 ball caster that's intended for the rear of the robot. First, place the rollers into the cutouts for them. Then place the plastic ball on top of the rollers. Then push the ball caster retention clip over the ball and into the chassis so the 3 legs snap into their respective holes. If you separately purchased a second ball caster for the front of your robot, go ahead and install that now. Next, install the 8-channel QTRX sensor array into the header pins near the battery compartment, being careful to line up the headers so you aren't off by a pin. That covers the basic assembly of the TI RSLK. You should now be ready to connect a TI Launchpad to your robot. TI Launchpads that are compatible with the TI RSLK should have header pins that are installed here, 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 and here. When you receive your Launchpad, you might have to solder some of these headers in yourself. The 5-volt shorting block should not be installed. If it is, you should remove it. Not doing so could break the chassis board. You might want to cut one of the header pins off so you don't accidentally install a shorting block here. Connect the Launchpad to the chassis board by lining up the pins on the sides of the Launchpad with the corresponding pins on the chassis board. Then press on the sides of the Launchpad, making sure the boards press together evenly. Pushing too much on one side could cause the male header pins on the chassis board to get pushed or pulled out of alignment. Now your TI RSLK is assembled and ready to use. If you want to install your breadboard, you can use the included hardware to mount the breadboard to the rear of the chassis. Use 1 set of standoffs to mount the breadboard like this, or stack your standoffs to mount the breadboard higher. The higher mounting position makes it so you can remove the TI Launchpad without uninstalling the breadboard. Thanks for watching this video. We hope you have a great time learning about robotics with
So yeah, that was the TI RSLK Max, and that is how we assemble the RSLK. So TI has made it in such a way that students have to assemble the robot, and they will have to program or implement their project using that robot. There's also a quick demo on Brainwave technology, so just look into that.
Hello everyone, this is Sandeep from Edgate Technologies. We are Texas Instrument University partner. I'll be giving a demo on how to control a robotic kit or any device using an Brainwaves. For that, we'll be requiring an RSLK robotic kit from Texas Instrument, which consists of multiple sensors, MSP430 launchpad and a Bluetooth module. And we require an EEG-based device which is capable of reading brainwaves. And we also require one app so that both the devices can interact between each other. So I'll just start a demo by wearing this device. As you can see in the app, there is one bar which indicates the concentration level. So I'll just start this device. So when my concentration level is more, device starts moving. Same way I go backward. Then right. Then left. Thank you.
Yeah, so that was a video on how to like control your TI RSLK using Brainwave technology. So that will be the end of this webinar. So if you have any queries regarding any topics for today, you can just ask those queries. And few students will be thinking how to learn all these. So there is a small online internship program going on from our side. So let me just show you that video also. So just give me a minute so that I can share. And I'll be showing the small video. Yeah, so it is a certified online internship program which is being held. So if you are interested, you can just yeah, you can just contact your college lecturer or anyone. So that will be the end of today's session. So if you have any queries or anything, you can just ask those queries so that I'll be able to solve your issues and your problems.
If anyone has query, you can actually put that on this chat box also.
Yeah, you can even post it on the chat box.
Okay, in that case, you don't have any query. So we'll wind up the session with thank Bharat sir from Edgate Technologies for doing. You can
Stop.
switch off the screen sharing. Yeah.
Yes.
So yeah, we thank you, sir, for joining us and actually guiding us on the IoT and the robotics part, because this is one thing which is there, right, that needs attention. What is happening actually is that robotics has a lot of scope, but students fear robotics. But
Yes.
this is a fact that in the time to come, robotics is going to rule the world. So there will be
Yes.
many processes
True.
are going to be automized. That is one thing. So we
True.
need to have a clear understanding how robotics works. So students from the second year who are there attending the sessions, or even the third year, final year students, you should know that robotics, how do we work on robotics, what is the basic logic, and then
Yes.
once the learning is developed, it can always be implemented later. So that is
Yes.
the idea. So with the basic robot building, or we may be using Texas Instrument kits or any other thing, if your logic is clear, then you can definitely go ahead in that particular field. And because
Yes. True.
Industry 4.0 revolution is all about robotics, IoT, AI, machine learning. Sir has also told, right, very briefly, that augmented reality, virtual reality, artificial intelligence, machine learning, this all is going to rule the world to come, because it is now Industry 4.0 revolution. Earlier,
Yes.
we were having Industry 2.0, 3.0. So the drastic changes were there. But now
Yes.
Industry 4.0, everything is going to involve all these fields. So you have to
Yes.
be a master, or you should have a basic knowledge of your robotics, right? How the things work, how the logic
Yes.
works,
True.
of IoT, right? What is Internet of Things, how you can connect the things to IoT, even
Yes.
artificial intelligence and machine learning. Because after this particular era, this industry is going to totally transform it itself into Industry 4.0. So that
Yes.
was the, yeah, that was actually the objective. And Sir has explained very well all these things, that that was the objective of arranging this session, that you need to understand that this is the need of the time now. And being in ENTC engineers, this is the thing that we need to do, right? So we have an upper hand over here being ENTC engineers as compared to
Yes.
maybe other branches like computer.
As yes, it is very
Yeah,
much true. As EC, ENTC, and EC engineers, we have more upper hand on all the other branches, because we will be able to do the computer science thing, all the other things also. So as an ENC, you will have exposure to all the things. It is not that you are only for electronics or nothing like that. You have to know programming. You have to do the extra things, extracurricular things also.
yeah. So exactly. So that is why building up all these domains will be better if you are in a core branch like ENTC, because you can always
Yes.
prepare other things also which are there, right? So that is the motto. And I hope Sir has very beautifully explained what is your robotics, what is IoT, what is your embedded system basics. So you can start right now, only you can start building yourself in that way, that how you can actually do those things, right? So in case of any help, we are always there. You can get back to us, you can mail us, or we can connect to Edgate also. So they have sponsored our Texas Labs also. We have a technical consultation with them also. So
Yes.
these things are good actually, right? So we thank you so much, sir, on behalf of JSPM's Imperial College of Engineering and Research, the management, principal,
Yes.
sir,
Thank
and
you.
on behalf of the department, we really thank you for taking up this webinar and introducing the students to Industry 4.0. I'm
Thank
also
you.
thankful to
Thanks.
all the faculty members and the coordinators of the workshop, Mr. Rishikesh Dhanvate, Mr. Trikolikar, and my other faculty members who have been a great support while attending the and organizing this particular workshop and managing the things. I'm also thankful to all the students who have come over here and they have attended this session, right? And will definitely be in touch for future also. So we are really thankful to all these participants also. If you have any query also, you can later on here also in chat box, you can drop, right? And we'll get back to you. Feedback link will be shared on the groups also. Okay. So that will be there.
Yes.
That link we are going to send on the group also. Okay. Thank you so much, everyone. Thank you, Raskar sir. Thank you all the faculty members also. Rishikesh sir, Kulikar sir, students, and everyone who I can see over here on the board for this session.
Yes.
Okay.
Thank you.
Thank you, ma'am.
Thank you. Thank you.